Yo, welcome back to Politics and Black Families. I'm today's host, Azad Ahmadi, Board Chair, Georgia Black Republican Council, and I have the absolute privilege today to sit with Richard Wright, former state Senate candidate, I believe you ran for office, for mayor's office back in 2021 as well, right?
2021, yep.
Yeah, so it's great to meet you, and if it's possible at all, could you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Good. I moved here to Atlanta in 1997 with a GED, and I told everybody I wanted to be a rapper, and no one signed me. Right, and so I ended up working at Burger King, working at McDonald's, and my mother taught me into going to college, and so I ended up going to get my undergrad degree at Herzing College. When I got my master's at Arizona State, I ended up taking and passing the CPA exam, so I'm a certified CPA, and I also went to Georgetown Law School.
Nice.
And so it was a lot in between of that, and struggling and moving through Atlanta, but I'm proud of this city, and I think there's great things that can happen in this city for African American families.
Awesome. When did you originally move here, if you mind me asking?
1997.
Let me ask you this: what city did you move from?
Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very good. How'd you like DC?
DC was interesting. I lived there when I was from 6 to 12, so I lived there during the crack epidemic,
yep.
when it really got popping.
Yep.
And so I seen some things, and I tell people the paid in full scene when they had the cars lined up on the street at the beginning.
Yep.
When I was about 12, and I was walking down the block, and it was 4 drop top BMWs. It was these dudes that they were about maybe 16.
Right.
And I was like, dog, everybody J's on, everything, right? And so I told my homeboy, I said, yo, I want to be a drug dealer when I grow up. And my mother got me up out of D.C. very quickly.
Yeah, it's a really, really influential point in time for Black Americans. I'm from Washington, D.C.
Yeah,
I grew up during the crack epidemic. Rayful Edmonds and the like was a big time driver in our community as it pertains to influencing the culture.
Yep. Yeah, it was interesting times.
Yeah, definitely.
How does your party's platform address the unique needs of Black families in America?
I think the Democratic Party is going through a transition now after the election. I think that we are going to start kind of from ground zero and believing that we have to build communities. That's an important thing. You have to build communities, and that's multifaceted, right? The first thing about building communities has to be education first. APS schools, and the third grades in APS, only 30% of them can read at grade level. That's not good enough. And so we have to have a mindful effort towards education first. How do we support the families? How we support the mothers? How we support the school teachers to get those scores up? And I remember I had an idea about summer school because of what COVID did. COVID backed our kids up. Not that they were advanced before COVID, but once COVID hit, you out of school for a couple of years. And so my idea was, well, let's have some mandatory summer school. And for the kids, let's say, hey, we're going to have mandatory summer schools next 2 summers. Then we're going to retest the kids, and that will be a way that we can try to fight back against the voucher bill that was passed under Kemp. Got you.
So, I would agree with a lot of what you have to say on that. On our side of it, on the Republican side of it, there's a lot of sentiment as it relates to supporting our inner city children and all of these different things. My frustration really lies with Democrats in the idea that, and I'm a former Democrat, and again, I'm from the Washington metropolitan area, went to school in Baltimore. My frustration is that Democrats really have been in charge the entirety of my life.
Yeah.
And, we saw, like you say, 30% of students being able to read in Atlanta. We saw in Baltimore City, for example, where 23 public schools recently announced that they have 0% of students Black students that could do math at grade level. And so I think we're at a point where Democrats definitely need to revisit the outcomes associated with the initiatives and the programs that they've been pushing. And it's actually relatively refreshing for me to hear that the Democrats are wanting to do that, quite frankly.
What are your views on the recent discussions around reparations, and how should this issue be addressed?
From my standpoint, I think reparations is kind of a dirty word now. right? The people who are against it have kind of demonized it, right? And so when I think of reparations, I think that we shouldn't use the word reparations. We should use the word investment, right? There needs to be investment in the black business ecosystem, right? And so how does that look? I think that it's multifaceted, right? I think that if you look at the size of the largest black bank, it's maybe $1 billion, right?
Yep.
Well, if Bank of America would, and the seven largest banks, if they would contribute money to 7 black banks, right? This is hypothetical to 7 black banks, right? And then those banks can lend money to African Americans at very low interest rates. Well, I'm going to have to do a what's in it for them for the banks, right? So I'm going to have to construct a tax credit for them to want to do that. But that will be able to streamline money. So I, Richard Wright, would be able to go to a black bank and borrow $100,000, right? Once I'm and Mr. paying that back, the black bank can pay back Bank of America. So the money can keep cycling that way. And that will also allow me to have working capital. I'll be able to hire people. And then the next step would be African Americans have to start patronizing other African Americans. I think that we need to look at our bank statements and we just say, if I'm not spending 70% of my disposable income with African Americans, then I'm not doing right. And I think we need to call on that. It needs to be 70%. When I look at my bank statement, I just see 70% of my disposable income going to a African American business, period.
Yeah. I kind of second the comments on banks. I think community banks are a big deal. And, there was a time in American history where we did have banks. We need to get back to that. Obviously, banking institutions in our communities, particularly in our inner city communities, that understand the businesses make a difference relative to who gets approved and not approved and so many other things. What I would say, though, is that Republicans are of the belief that black business needs to be created, so to speak, in industries that are scalable. In other words, we have probably enough barbershops and beauty salons. We need, development firms. We need businesses that are creating products that appeal to the broader American society, not just black society. And that's how we end up generating more jobs and putting other brothers and sisters to work. I'll give you a great example. A great example is C.D. Moody, and a local construction firm you're probably aware. I think he's the largest black-owned construction firm in the country. Well, quite frankly, he's doing development at an airport where there's horizontal construction as well as vertical construction that has to take place. Concrete trucks have to pour, pipes have to be ran, copper wire has to be pulled. And so that pulls a lot more African Americans, particularly men, into the workforce in trades that, quite frankly, pay well, and in some instances in many instances are 6-figure salaries, helping us grow the middle class and so many different things. So, again, I would agree with you on the banks. I think we just have a little bit of work we need to do in our community as it relates to building scalable business. And oh, by the way, the funding component of that is unfortunately at a federal level not really structured, because the SBA, for example, requires you to have a 2-year history before they can issue you a loan. And so where our businesses struggle to get over the major humps are in things like commercial insurances and bonding, where and so the businesses essentially never get generated. So I think we need to work some things out there, but I would agree and have some sentiment towards your general opinion.
I also think that the mindset in our communities need to move more towards partnering with each other. I think that we need to have more businesses need to be multi-owner businesses. A lot of times in Atlanta, we believe in, I want to be the chief and you have to be the Indian.
Yeah.
All right. That's the Atlanta mindset, right?
Yep.
And we need to shift to, hey, we can be co-chiefs together.
Sure.
And so when you have more businesses who are partners, right, you mitigate risk. And that's what banks are about, right? Yep. Banks are about risk mitigation. And so if I have 4 partners in a partnership, well, the bank can sue 5 people, right?
That's
I can sue the partnership itself. I can make all 4 owners do a personal guarantor, and that way all of them can be sued. So it's risk mitigation. And so when we as black businesses walk into a bank, I think we need to put ourselves in the bank shoes and put yourself in the bank shoes, saying, hey, what I lend to me, right? They need to be the first question you ask yourself whenever you ask anybody for money.
Sure.
Will I lend to me? And so, last thing on that, I think manufacturing is going to come back to America, right? I think that President Trump is promising tariffs. All right, tariffs are, and I mean, we may get to that question a little later on, but it's to affect behavior of another country. That's what a tariff is, right?
Duties and tariffs. Yep.
And domestically, we affect behavior by taxation. All right, and so there's a component of manufacturing, I believe, that's going to come back to America, and how we as a Black community could take advantage of that.
So I've had the privilege of working in the manufacturing sector, and I'll tell you. So, where's that? My camera right there. Mm-hmm. So I'm not drinking the Republican Kool-Aid, right? There's a lot that I believe in, but there's some things that I definitely disagree with. Mm-hmm. And I've heard things from Trump and other Republicans saying that they want to bring manufacturing back to America. It isn't going to happen. Okay, the duties and tariffs that were imposed on China led to us or U.S. manufacturers outsourcing manufacturing operations to countries like Mexico and cities like Monterey. If you get off of a plane in Monterey, you'll see nothing there but Black and white businessmen that are looking to make one type of good or another. A great example of that is Johnson Controls, the famous HVAC company. They manufacture there, as do many, many, many other firms. Matter of fact, vast majority of that city has been bought up. The real estate's been bought up by American firms. And so I hear the imposition of duties and tariffs, but I fail to see what it actually creates by way of opportunities for Americans as it relates to jobs and as it relates to things like inflation. So I'm not necessarily buying that. I understand that Republicans have said they're going to do many things, but again, I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid because I come from that industry.
How can we bridge the growing political divide within the Black community?
Can you read it back one more time?
How can we bridge the growing political divide within the Black community?
I mean, I think we have to start thinking as one again in the Black community. We didn't integrate, we diluted. And I say that again, we didn't integrate, we diluted. And so if we as a people want to advance collectively, then we have to have a collective mindset. But it's difficult, right? When you are an investment banker and you're making $250 a year versus if you are a guy who just got out of prison, right? Your mindsets are different, your wants are different, your needs are different at that particular point in time. And so we have to get back to the single mindset we had in the 50s and 60s that, hey, the goal is to integrate, not dilute. And so if we can get back to that one mindset, no matter if you're Harry Belafonte or if you're a sharecropper.
That's right.
Right, you have one mindset. And I think the mindset needs to be around the Black business ecosystem. I think it needs to be around the nuclear family.
I agree. I 100% agree with what you're saying. I would probably add that I think one of the things that's kind of preventing us from coming together is a lot of the divisive talk from both sides, whether it's an agenda of one side to, on the LGBTQ thing, or masculinity and femininity we're hearing more about these days, or social programs, right? But ultimately what this turns into is I think that our families need to get government out of their house, period. We love each other. I can't say enough how many families I've met with where there are very stark political divides, but everybody loves each other. I recently got a chance to sit with a family in New Orleans, and one of the parents is a stark Republican. The son is a married gay male, and very stark opinions in the room. I think there's about 10 people representing all different, from everyone from boomers down to what's the newest one, Gen Z. And while everyone disagreed, everyone also laughed and had a good time, and everyone loves everyone. And there's still a barbecue and all these different things. I think we need to get back to what matters to us most, which is our families.
Yeah, it's difficult, the way the political machine has worked. Really since Newt Gingrich, he was the one who really came in the '90s who said that they had to be the enemy, and so that's where him and Clinton operated, and then Donald Trump came in and seen that and said, I'm going to magnify that to the 10th degree. And so, and we're guilty of it too as Democrats. We like to demonize our Republican brothers and sisters. We don't say, hey, this is the thought process that I have. Do you agree or disagree with it? And then have a real high functioning conversation.
Sure.
We tend to demonize. I know you received plenty of.
I've been all the Uncle Toms. Man. I've been every kind of Uncle Tom you can imagine. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's kind of productive.
Agreed.
And so what I like to do is I like to talk to anybody, right? Not that I'm better than anybody.
Sure.
Not that Jesus is going to let me into heaven just because I got a CPA license. No, it's just
Right.
I have to earn my way into heaven, and I try to earn every vote, and that's
Nice.
my goal. I want to earn every vote by being. I'd rather tell you a ugly truth than a beautiful lie, and
I think there's a lot of credibility that comes from telling the truth. I think there's a lot of credibility that you establish with the community.
Yeah.
What specific policies does your party support to tackle systemic inequality in housing, education, and unemployment?
Wow. I think that we as Democrats have traditionally thought that we're just going to kind of give our way out of it, right? I can give you out of poverty, right? And that is just not sustainable, right? Because you can never give a person out of poverty. I think that once we really start realizing that times have changed, is it perfect? No. Is America this utopia? No, it's not, right? But it is a place that has gotten better over the years. And so, and when it comes to education, I think we need to value it more. I think we moved away from truly valuing the essence of what education can bring to your life. And I think that we look at it just as a 4-year degree. When you look at education, you just look at learning something. Can I gain a skill set that I could take into the world to solve a problem? That's what education is.
That's really what it's about.
That's what it's about,
right?
Because do I have a skill set that I could take into the world and solve a problem in the world? Plumbing is a problem. I tell people all the time,
Agreed.
every pipe that has ever been made will burst. You know why? Because man made it, right?
Right.
That's why it will burst. Every electrician. So these are jobs and industries really where I would like to see more of an emphasis from Democrat leadership on really communicating these ideas to our young brothers and sisters that, hey, a 4-year degree is great. I got one, right? But there's nothing wrong with being a plumber, electrician.
That's right.
Would be in the manufacturer, would be in the construction. And so once you start cobbling together that, hey, once you get a skill set that you could take out into the community, I think that's kind of where one of the ways it starts. And I think hopefully.
So you're pro trades.
I'm
Plumbers
pro,
and pipe fitters, the electricians. You're for that.
I'm very much so pro that. I think that we need to, as Democrats, we need to start really hammering that point home. And I think it starts young. And we need to really look at kind of the culture of how we've kind of demonized certain work. All right.
Yeah,
we need to
I would
start
agree.
really promoting more. Say, hey, you know what? Instead of being on the street corner, right? You can go get your HVAC, get certified, and be out here making money and being a positive influence in the community.
Right.
As a brother.
Right. I'm old enough to remember. I'm old enough to remember when every parent wanted their kid to get a college degree, and I'm old enough to remember, black students from the inner city running the HBCUs in blue cities, and quite frankly being taken advantage of. A lot of these students that went to these schools, they were never really prepared to go to college in the first place, but they weren't or didn't see any other options, and so we saw. I remember again seeing students going into HBCUs getting debt. Getting in debt and heavily in debt, the universities exploiting them as such, and for 2 or 3 years, only for them to not graduate, end up with the debt and still have no skill, no job. Whereas in many instances, the same student could have put himself to use and made himself useful in the general trades, and probably in that time have earned a middle class salary, which is, I think, a little bit more beneficial, not just to them, but to the greater society.
How should the Black community navigate voting rights challenges in the current political climate?
I think that what I like to say is that I always like to give people a reason to vote. I think as a person running for office, that's my job. I need to give you a reason to vote, and specifically to vote for me, right? And that's challenging, right? When you have some megaphones that say, well, voting rights are being taken. Now, do we have some challenges when it comes to voting rights? Yes. Is this 1955? No, right? And so we need to be honest with people about, hey, this is why you should vote, right? This is what we've done to get the vote. I don't think a lot of the new generation know kind of the trials and tribulations of our grandparents and great grandparents just getting the right to vote. And there's a reason why people didn't want you to vote, because I tell people all the time that's the only day in your life that you're worth the same amount as Bill Gates.
That's right.
Is when you walk in the voting booth.
We all count as one,
It
right?
all counts as one. It's the only day in your life. Now, when you leave that voting booth, now he's still a billionaire. You still have what you have, right?
Yeah.
But that's the only time in your life that you will ever be worth as much as a billionaire. So take advantage of it,
Yeah.
right? Exercise that right to vote. And then once you exercise that right to vote, you can then start really voicing your opinion when the winner doesn't act right, even if you voted for the loser, right? If you voted for Kamala Harris and you voted, then you can hold President Trump accountable, and you should hold him accountable.
That's right. That's right. I would agree. We definitely need to hold our politicians accountable at the local, state, federal level. I mean, no doubt about it. That's something we probably could do better as a community. As it relates to the vote, I would agree again with the gentleman that every vote counts. I think this idea that people sit on the sidelines, I think it actually doesn't bode well for our community. I think we need as many people voicing their opinion, whether they win or lose, voicing their opinion by way of casting a vote, and that's the way the system picks up on the mandate to America. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, voting counts.
What role does criminal justice reform play in your party's agenda, and how can we ensure meaningful change?
Well, criminal justice, there's a House bill. Eric Bell has a bill, right? I think it's HB 853 or 843, where he wants to make it so if you have a felony, a drug felony, you can get the Pell Grant again, right? I think it's an excellent bill. I think that we need to combine the topics of when you do something, right, you should get something for it. So I believe in exoneration. Or I believe that if you if we construct a certain paradigm, right? Say if you're coming out of prison, right, and we say you get a trade, you work for 2 years. I believe that all nonviolent charges should be exonerated. And I think where we kind of bump heads, parties bump heads with the criminal justice system, is that when you because you serve time, a lot of times people don't see that as you giving back or you paid your debt, because psychologically, and we're not honest with people about this, psychologically, if I break in your store, right, and I get caught, I've agreed with you, haven't I? Right? And so then if I get sentenced to prison, you're going to take your tax dollar, take care of me, right? Because that's how prisons are funded, right, through taxpayer dollars. And so I've agreed with you twice. And so people hold that in their mental block, right, whether they would admit it or not. And so when it comes to criminal justice, I believe that we need to move towards there's a second chance, obviously, but also, hey, what do I have to do to earn that second chance? And I think that's kind of where we're going to meet at in the middle.
Yeah. I think that, you commit a crime, you pay a price. There's consequences to the actions that we take. That's consistent in any society. Are there some inequities? I think there are. The fact that one person gets, 8 years for an eighth and another person, for example, gets 4 years for an eighth, I think there's something wrong with that. But the greater concern, the greater issue that I have in our inner city communities in particular, is what's putting young black men in front of a judge in the first place, right? And so what I see from a party perspective is that the Republican platform is built on a set of values that are a little more consistent with keeping you out of that trouble and creating a sense of accountability amongst the people involved. And so to answer the young lady's question about what the party has to offer, I think when we align around values, I think a lot of these other things like the criminal justice system become less important.
Final question. What are your thoughts on the role of Black leadership within your party, and how can it be strengthened?
I'm gonna take that one. If you don't mind, I'm gonna take that one, right? So, I am not a career politician. I'm not a politician at all. I'm just a guy who cares about his community. And I got involved in politics about a year ago. Okay, and I'll tell you, as it relates to Black Republicans, and look, this is gonna go around the internet, but I'll be the first to say, as a group, from what I've seen, there's a major gap between Black Republicans as a whole, like Black Republicans in the political system, and how relatable they are to the rest of the Black community. The age gap is a big deal. The honest truth is that a 21-year-old is not going to see the world the same way that a 65-year-old does, right? And so, as a consequence, some of the narrative and the campaigning and so forth hasn't really reached a number of young Black folks. I think we're seeing now for the first time with Trump running that, and given the leverage of social media, that the message is sort of trickling down. But to answer the young lady's question, I just think that Black Republicans could push to the forefront a younger demographic that understands our inner city, that is not part of the traditional Republican establishment, and rather coming with new, fresh ideas. I think it's time for a change. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and I say that I'm not a career politician either. The first thing I ever ran for was mayor of Atlanta. That's the first thing I ever ran for, and I ran for it because I cared about the city. I came down here as a kid with a GED, right? And 24 years later, I had a CPA license, worked Big Four, and did all that. And Atlanta really, really raised me, right? When I did wrong, Atlanta got on me.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
When I didn't pay my rent, I got put out. Right?
Yep.
And so when I quit the job, I felt the ramifications of quitting the job. And Atlanta did that for me. And so I tell everybody, Atlanta did raise me. It kicked my butt. And so I said, in 2021, I said, we're having record crime. Buckhead City was on the back, was up there. And then I said, well, I want to run and say, hey, I want to make it a fiscal issue. I think that Atlanta spends money terribly, and we could do a better job of that. And so, in terms of the Democrats and leadership, I think that we have to kind of look at ourselves and say, hey, have we been effective with what we're doing for pretty much the last 60 years? And I think that the answer, if we're honest, is no. Mm-hmm. All right, and so I
appreciate that transparency, that honesty, man.
Yeah, I'm honest about it. Again, that's why I ran. That's why I ran for the state houses, because I said, hey, I think that the Georgia Assembly, you're gonna have to have a different voice, mm-hmm. Right? They keep hearing the same voices in the Georgia Assembly. You're gonna get the same results. Yep. But I don't like to toot my own horn. But where I was gonna pass my CPA license on the table, then we have a conversation. But I think that we just we have to identify, hey, what can we do, and start from the basics. And the basics is a Black nuclear family. How could we start having more two-parent households raising their kids? I think that we see the numbers that African American men in two-parent households fare better. I think we need to put more of an emphasis on education. I think we need to make it cool again to be educated. And I think we have to start really cultivating ideas, sitting in the room disagreeing with each other, mm-hmm. and come up with a solution that then we can take to the greater America. Because I believe that America is stronger when African American communities are stronger.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah. Well, Brother Wright, it was definitely good to get to know you.
Yes, sir. Good to know you as well.
So, folks, that wraps up this episode of Politics in Black Families. Dial in for more in the near future. Peace.
Cut. Great. Check this out.